Washington, D.C., December 12, 1941, 5 days after Pearl Harbor. The United States is at war. The War Department is in controlled chaos, officers moving through corridors with the specific urgency of people who understand that the situation is worse than the public knows and that the gap between where the Army is and where it needs to be is enormous, and the time available to close it is very short. General George C. Marshall, Army Chief of Staff, the most important military officer in America, summons a lieutenant colonel he has never met. The lieutenant colonel's name is Dwight Eisenhower. He is 51 years old. He has never commanded troops in combat. He has never served in a war zone. He is, by the standard measures of military achievement, a man whose career has produced nothing that justifies what Marshall is about to ask of him, while Marshall gives him a problem. The situation in the Pacific, Japan's advance, the Philippines, the catastrophic losses at Pearl Harbor. What should we do? Eisenhower asks for a few hours. He comes back with an answer so clear and so complete that Marshall stares at him for a long moment before responding. That answer and the mind that produced it will change the course of the war. But to understand how a 51-year-old lieutenant colonel who has never fired a shot in combat could produce that answer, you have to understand the 20 years that nobody saw. This is Episode 2, The Invisible Years. The years between the wars are the years that history skips. There are no great battles in them, no defining moments that make for clean documentary footage or dramatic reenactments. There is only the long, grinding, largely unrewarded work of a professional soldier doing his job in an army that the country has decided it no longer needs, in a period when military service carries neither the prestige of wartime nor the resources to do the job properly. The United States Army of the 1920s is a diminished institution. The Great War is over. The country has turned inward toward prosperity and isolationism, and the belief, sincerely held by most Americans, that the war to end all wars has in fact ended wars. The army shrinks, budgets are cut, promotions slow to a pace that can only be described as geological. Officers who entered the service with genuine ambition find themselves in middle age doing work that would have been assigned to junior officers in wartime at ranks that no longer correspond to their experience or their ability. Eisenhower navigates this environment with the discipline of someone who has decided that circumstances do not determine character. Only responses to circumstances do. He is frustrated. He is passed over. He watches less capable men advance past him through connections he does not have and political instincts he does not care to develop. And he works. Every posting, however mundane, every assignment, however beneath his ability. He brings to each of them the total attention of a mind that has decided preparation is its own reward, regardless of whether the world is currently interested in what he is preparing for. The first great teacher arrives in Panama. Brigadier General Fox Connor commands the garrison in Panama, where Eisenhower is posted in 1922. And the assignment that seemed on paper like another step nowhere turns out to be the most important 3 years of Eisenhower's professional life. Connor is unlike any officer Eisenhower has previously encountered. A man of genuine intellectual depth who has read everything and thought about everything and developed views about war and history and the nature of leadership that he is willing to share with a junior officer who can receive them. Connor sees Eisenhower immediately and completely. He recognizes the quality of mind, the ability to hold complex problems, to see through surface detail to underlying structure, to think clearly under pressure without the emotional noise that distorts most people's judgment. He begins deliberately and systematically to develop what he sees. The education is rigorous and personal. Connor assigns reading Clausewitz's On War, histories of every major military campaign from Napoleon through the Great War, studies of logistics and coalition dynamics and the particular problems of commanding Allied forces with different national interests and different military cultures. He assigns the reading and then discusses it with Eisenhower in sessions that are less like briefings than like graduate seminars, pressing him on his assumptions, challenging his conclusions, forcing him to defend his thinking against an interlocutor who knows more and thinks faster than anyone Eisenhower has previously argued with. This is the education that West Point promised and did not entirely deliver. This is the development of a strategic mind, not the tactical intelligence of the battlefield commander who sees the ground in front of him and responds, but the broader, cooler, more analytical intelligence of the planner who sees the entire theater, the entire war, the entire coalition, and understands how all of it fits together. Connor tells him something in these years that lodges in him permanently. The next war will not be like the last one. It will be larger, more complex, fought across multiple theaters simultaneously, requiring the coordination of allies who will have competing interests and conflicting priorities. The officer who will matter most in that war will not be the most aggressive or the most decorated. It will be the one who can hold the coalition together, who can manage the competing egos of national commanders, translate between different military cultures, and keep the alliance focused on the objective when everything is pulling it apart. Prepare, Connor tells him, prepare for that specific challenge. Study not just military history, but politics, diplomacy, the psychology of leadership at the highest levels. Understand not just how to fight a battle, but how to manage the men who fight battles, the generals, the politicians, the heads of state who will all believe their perspective is the correct one and will require, constantly, the patience and the skill to be kept aligned. Eisenhower listens. He files everything. He prepares. The years in Panama end, and Eisenhower moves through a series of postings that continue to develop what Connor started. Command and General Staff School at Fort Leavenworth in 1925, the Army's premier professional education institution, where the best officers are sent to be refined. Eisenhower arrives as one of 275 students and graduates first in his class. This is not a minor achievement. The competition includes the most talented officers in the American Army, men who have spent years preparing for exactly this examination, and Eisenhower finishes ahead of every one of them. The result announces to anyone paying attention that there is something in this lieutenant colonel that the previous 20 years of obscurity have not made visible. The Army War College follows. More study, more analysis, more development of the strategic thinking that Connor began. Eisenhower moves through these institutions with the efficiency of someone who understands exactly what he is building and why each piece matters. But the postings between the schools are where the real education continues, and the most consequential of them brings him into extended proximity with the most complicated figure in the American military. Douglas MacArthur. Eisenhower serves under MacArthur first in Washington, where MacArthur is Army Chief of Staff, and then in the Philippines, where MacArthur goes after his Washington tenure to build the Philippine Army from scratch. The relationship extends across nearly a decade, and it is one of the most instructive of Eisenhower's career, not because MacArthur teaches him what to do, but because MacArthur teaches him with extraordinary vividness and consistency what not to do. MacArthur is a general of genuine brilliance. His understanding of military operations, his grasp of strategic dynamics in the Pacific, his physical courage under fire, these are real and documented and deserving of the reputation they created. But MacArthur's brilliance is inseparable from an ego of proportional size, and the ego creates problems that the brilliance is constantly required to manage. MacArthur sees himself as the central figure in every narrative in which he appears. Every success is his success. Every setback is the result of someone else's failure or political opposition or the insufficient appreciation of his superiors for his unique capacities. He constructs and maintains a public persona with the deliberateness of a man who understands that reputation is a form of power. And he manages that persona with a rigidity that leaves no space for the ordinary human vulnerability that makes leaders trustworthy to the people who serve them. Eisenhower watches all of this with the attention of a man filing evidence for a conclusion he is slowly forming. He admires what MacArthur does well. He has no illusions about what MacArthur does poorly, and he understands with increasing clarity through the years of working in MacArthur's shadow that the kind of leader he intends to be is almost the precise inverse of what he is observing. MacArthur leads through the force of his own personality, through spectacle, through the projection of infallibility, through the insistence that his will and the Army's will are identical. Eisenhower leads in the limited opportunities he has to lead in these years through something quieter and more durable, through competence so consistent that it becomes its own form of authority, through the willingness to say what he actually thinks to people who have the power to end his career if they dislike what they hear, through the capacity to take responsibility for failures that are partly his own and partly the result of circumstances beyond his control, without wasting energy on the assignment of blame. These qualities are not dramatic. They do not make for the kind of military persona that gets written about in newspapers or celebrated in the culture of the interwar army, but they are building something, slowly, invisibly, across the years of obscurity that will prove, when the time comes, more valuable than anything the dramatic gestures could have produced. Mamie sees some of this. She sees less of Eisenhower than she wants. The Army's demands on his time and attention are constant, and the emotional demands that she makes are consistently subordinated to the professional ones, not because he does not love her, but because the work always comes first, and she has known since she married him that the work always comes first, and the knowing does not make it easier. The marriage in these years is a real marriage, complicated, tested, imperfect, sustained by affection and commitment, and the shared loss of Ikai that neither of them can speak about easily, but that binds them in the way that shared grief binds people who have been through it together. Mamie drinks more than she should in some periods. Eisenhower is absent more than he should be in all periods. They argue, they reconcile, they continue. She is not a simple woman, and the marriage is not a simple marriage. And the public image of Mamie Eisenhower, the cheerful, devoted military wife, bangs and smile and absolute support, is a construction that simplifies something considerably more complicated. What is true is that she is there through every posting, every move, every year of obscurity, and every year of glory. She is the consistent thing in a life defined by constant change, and her presence means more to him than he will find easy to say, and he will spend most of their marriage finding it difficult to say it as often as she needs to hear it. The Philippines years are the final chapter of the invisible period, and they are also the most frustrating. MacArthur has been given the assignment of building the Philippine Commonwealth Army into a force capable of defending the islands when independence comes, and he has brought Eisenhower with him as his chief of staff, the man who will translate MacArthur's vision into operational reality, who will manage the logistics and the planning and the grinding organizational work that the vision requires. It is, in some ways, the most demanding assignment Eisenhower has undertaken. The resources are inadequate. The timeline is impossible. The political pressures from the Philippine government and from Washington pull in directions that rarely align, and MacArthur, operating at the distance of a proconsul rather than a field commander, is a difficult principle, visionary in his overall conception, inconsistent in his attention to detail, and inclined to take credit for successes while distributing blame for failures with a selectivity that Eisenhower finds both predictable and corrosive. Eisenhower makes the Philippine Army project work as well as it can be made to work, which is well enough to demonstrate his organizational abilities, and not well enough to build a genuinely capable defensive force before the Japanese make the question academic. He learns what large-scale organization requires: the coordination of supply chains, personnel systems, training programs, equipment procurement, all of it simultaneously under resource constraints that make every decision a trade-off. He learns, in the Philippines, how to run something large and complex and underfunded without losing sight of the objective. He is 50 years old in 1940, still a lieutenant colonel, still officially going nowhere. The war in Europe has been underway for a year. Germany has conquered France. Britain is fighting alone. The United States is moving slowly and reluctantly toward a confrontation with events it cannot indefinitely ignore. Eisenhower requests reassignment back to the United States. He wants to be where things are moving, where the army he has served for 30 years is finally beginning to rebuild itself into something capable of fighting a modern war. MacArthur is reluctant to let him go. Eisenhower is too useful, too competent, too reliably effective at the things MacArthur needs done. But the request is eventually approved, and in late 1939, Eisenhower returns to the continental United States. He is assigned to the Third Army in Texas under General Walter Kruger, and he runs the planning for a series of large-scale military exercises, the Louisiana Maneuvers of 1941, that are the American Army's most serious attempt to test itself against the scale of warfare that Europe has been experiencing for 2 years. The exercises are enormous, hundreds of thousands of troops, multiple corps, the full complexity of a modern military operation played out across the Louisiana and Texas countryside. Eisenhower plans them, he coordinates them, he solves the logistical problems that nobody else has been able to solve. He runs an operation of a complexity that the American Army has not previously attempted, and he runs it so well that the officers who observe it are left with a clear understanding that something significant has just happened, that there is a mind at work here that the Army cannot afford to keep at the rank of lieutenant colonel. He is promoted to brigadier general in October 1941, 1 star. The first, he does not celebrate. He is not the celebrating type, or rather, he is the type who celebrates by going back to work immediately. There is more to do. There is always more to do. The war in Europe is consuming everything. The situation in the Pacific is deteriorating. The Japanese are extending their reach across the ocean with a speed and a thoroughness that the American intelligence estimate has consistently underestimated. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese Navy attacks Pearl Harbor. Eisenhower is at home in Texas when the news comes over the radio. He listens to the reports with the particular attention of a man who has spent 20 years preparing for exactly this moment. Not this specific moment, not Pearl Harbor specifically, but the moment when the abstract preparation becomes concrete necessity, when the invisible years of study and planning and organizational learning are required to produce something real. He goes to his office. He begins working. He's not surprised that the war has come. He has been expecting it for 20 years. What happens next moves faster than even he anticipated. The call from Washington comes on December 12th, 5 days after Pearl Harbor. General Walter Bedell Smith, Marshall's Secretary of the General Staff, delivers the message. Report to Washington immediately. General Marshall wants to see you. Eisenhower has heard of Marshall. Everyone in the Army has heard of Marshall, the meticulous, demanding, brilliant officer who has been rebuilding the American Army since 1939 with the focused intensity of a man who understands that what he is building will determine whether the United States survives the next 5 years. Marshall does not tolerate mediocrity. He does not keep officers who perform adequately when he needs officers who perform extraordinarily. He has a gift for identifying in the people who cross his desk the specific quality he needs, and a ruthlessness about moving people out of his way when they cannot provide it. Eisenhower reports to Marshall's office on the morning of December 14th. Marshall outlines the situation in the Pacific with the efficiency of a man who does not waste words. The Philippines are under attack. MacArthur's forces are being pushed back. American naval power in the Pacific has been devastated at Pearl Harbor. What should be done? He gives Eisenhower a few hours. Eisenhower goes to a desk and thinks. He does not panic. He does not perform the considering of the problem. He actually considers it with the full force of the analytical mind that Fox Connor began developing 20 years earlier, and that the invisible years of study and preparation have refined into something formidable. He thinks about what can be done and what cannot be done, about where resources exist and where they do not, about the strategic realities that constrain the options and the human realities that constrain them further. He comes back to Marshall with an answer. The Philippines cannot be saved. The forces are too far away, the Japanese advance too rapid, the naval situation too compromised. The priority must be Australia, which can serve as the base for the eventual counteroffensive that will take years to build but must begin now. America must commit to the Pacific while keeping its larger strategic focus on Europe, where Germany remains the primary threat. The two theaters must be managed simultaneously, with clear priorities and clear resource allocation, and the management must begin immediately. Marshall listens. He's quiet for a moment after Eisenhower finishes. Then he tells him to stay in Washington. He is needed here. This is the moment, not a battle, not a dramatic command decision under fire. A quiet conversation in an office between two men who understand each other immediately, in which the larger of the two minds recognizes the smaller, recognizes it, and decides to use it. Eisenhower will be promoted 4 times in the next 18 months. He will rise from brigadier general to full general, from War Department planner to supreme commander of Allied forces in Europe, from the man nobody had heard of to the man the free world is counting on. He will do it not through connections or political maneuvering or the cultivation of the right relationships at the right moments. He will do it because he is the best prepared man in the room, because 20 years of invisible work have produced a mind and a character that the crisis requires. Because Fox Connor told him to prepare, and he prepared, and now the moment has come and the preparation is visible at last. The boy from Abilene, who spent 20 years going nowhere, is about to go everywhere. Episode 3, The Rise. From unknown colonel to supreme commander in 18 months, and the moment he almost lost everything before it began. This is Legends of America.